How do I say your last name? I want to make sure I'm not doing this completely wrong.
Cescato.
Cescato. Okay.
Yeah. In Italian, CE it makes a ch sound.
Gotcha. That's similar in Slovenian, so that makes
Okay.
sense, especially because we're on countries are bordered, right? So.
Yeah, well, especially where my family in Italy lives. Actually, they're in northern Italy. They're actually kind of in the middle of the outbreak there. But my mom's family is in the region of Italy called Friuli Venezia Giulia, and they're actually right next to Slovenia.
Oh right, yeah. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna get started. Basically, the way the game this works is there's a series of cities in a region,
Mhm.
and I kind of narrowed it down. I figured that we'd kind of try and keep it close to like the look of Ontario. So there's one that's kind of a bay. It's supposed to be a sea, but
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
just pretend it's a
Well,
Great Lake for our purposes.
hashtag actually a C.
Yeah,
We'll be
exactly.
fine. We'll be fine.
Let's call it not Ontario.
Ontario.
Ontario. So then we have to claim a spot, and this is where I'm going to kind of like start letting you kind of drive from the back seat.
Alright.
We have to
Um,
choose a location somewhere here, and the idea is that there's different resources at each spot,
mhm.
as well as the potential for rail connection and shipping. Um,
Okay.
so, a kind of mountainous hill would have more ore and minerals. It doesn't really matter so much. We can basically just choose based on your aesthetic preference.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take the mountainous hills in the middle of the bay there. That looks like
This one here?
yeah, more tourist potential.
Perfect.
I mean, urban planning doesn't get into resource management in terms of natural resources anyway. I mean, not that it's
Excellent,
not
excellent.
affected, but
So, just kind of while we're waiting for it to load and everything, do you mind? I actually don't really know what you do day to day. I know that you're a
oh.
manager in community planning, but I don't know what that means.
Well, community planning is the part of the city planning division that does development review for the most part. So we do, zoning amendment applications, site plan applications, condo subdivision, committee of adjustment, all that stuff. Um, Official plan amendments as they relate to, development.
Yep.
And we do also do smaller localized studies, and we assist our policy colleagues in conducting studies as well. And what I do essentially is I used to be senior plan. I was started my career with the city as an assistant planner, became a planner, senior planner, and then worked. Now I'm a manager, and I manage about 9 staff who work on development applications in the North York center area of the city. So my geography is the 401, Bayview, Steeles, and the Allen approximately.
Mm-hmm.
And as development applications come in, we review them, check them for conformity with the official plan. We we circulate them to our commenting divisions and agencies to see if they're, they're able to be serviced, if there are traffic issues, or if they go to urban design for built form evaluation, that sort of thing. And then, we make recommendations to council at that point. Either we think this is great and you should approve it, or we think it's terrible and you should refuse it. And then council um, decides what they want to do with it.
Awesome. And so, is it mostly work that is reviewing of submissions, or are you doing any kind of like long-term um, planning yourselves, or like strategizing around that region?
Yeah, we do both.
Mm.
So our bread and butter is reviewing applications that come in. That I would say is the bulk of the work that we do. But we're also undertaking a secondary plan exercise right now for the stretch of Young between Steeles and Finch, and that's because there's some anticipation that the subway will extend into Richmond Hill. So we're thinking ahead as to what kind of density you would want to see there. Obviously, you need subway supportive densities, but also you need to balance that against what would constitute a complete community. We need soft infrastructure, we need hard infrastructure, you need parks, do you need new roads, do you need daycare, schools, that sort of thing. So we do those long range studies as well.
Awesome. It's an interesting balance, I imagine, between the two. The
Mm-hmm.
kind of like getting the day-to-day work done and then switching into. Do you find it's a different mode? And before you answer that question, we need to draw a road
Mm-hmm.
from this highway. So where would you
Okay.
like? Where would you like us to? I'm going to get kind of a north orientation here, and you can tell me east, north.
Um, well, can we zoom out a little bit? Let me see where we are here.
This is about as far back as we can go. So here are the boundaries of
Okay.
our
Okay, so
little
we're not
town.
actually. Oh, we don't have waterfront. That's garbage.
Oh yeah, no, we do.
Well,
We have
there
a
it is.
coast
Oh,
here.
there it is. There it is. All right, there's
So
the
we can
house.
basically choose to make this industry or tourism. They don't really support each other in this game.
Yeah,
So
no.
you can
Well,
imagine.
yeah. I mean, traditionally, right? If we look at old cities, they would have started the waterfront would have started off industrial, but I don't see that we need to do that. I would rather um, start it off as a mixed. I don't even know what kind of land uses we can paper on here, but
Right. Let's quickly review that. So you've basically got residential zoning,
mhm
commercial zoning,
mhm.
and industrial. That's it. There's no opportunity for mixed use, really,
So
or
archaic.
anything more advanced than the three basic. That's basically it.
Well, I think we should make our waterfront. Well, I mean, if I were doing this, I'd probably start with like a grid pattern, like a finer grain grid of streets, and then I think we should probably make this our residential and commercial hub. We'll start there, I
Down
guess.
here, all right.
No.
So we'll just go with a basic grid
Mhm.
down to the water.
Grids are good because um, they really lend themselves to infill afterwards in a way that makes sense. Like the parcels are easier to assemble, partly because actually the land use parcels are in some ways less efficient than they are in curvilinear subdivisions, but they do make assembly and infill as the city grows easier in many respects.
I'm just gonna follow this
Yeah.
grid line that's been recommended by the game. All right. And so you want to zone this commercial and residential
And
for now?
yeah, I guess, yeah.
Connect your city. Then zone along the roads. So we've got. Oh, I have to hit play so that it actually realizes that that's what we've done. We've drawn a road from the highway. City founding is approved. We have been granted permits for water, power, and zoning.
Oh wow, look at that.
So the city has actually officially begun. We can begin dropping resi, power, water, sewage, all of the important stuff.
Yeah, well, we'll need all of that for sure.
So you're working from home now, right?
Mhm.
And how's that as an adjustment for you?
Uh, I mean, as a management staff of the city are pretty well equipped to work at home. We have some infrastructure constraints, so not everybody at the city can be online at the same time. We're a pretty big organization. Not everybody has the capacity to log in from home. So, I mean, I can get by doing my thing. My preoccupation for the most part right now is making sure stuff that can be completed is completed. Checking in on my team every day. We're doing some web calls and virtual meetings. Just try and stay connected. I'm concerned about their well-being and mental health as well during this time. They have more limited capacity to work from home than I do.
Right, right.
And it's the adjustments. I mean, like I'm home with my wife is home as well. My son is home, and he has some homeschooling work he's meant to do. So it's a balance, right? I'm trying to do my work that I'm expected to do, um, help my son progress with a little bit of schoolwork. He's in JK, so it's not it's not complicated work, but it's still stuff he needs to keep up on, his reading and writing and stuff like that. And then my wife has to do her work as well. So, before I jumped on this call, I was making my son's lunch. I was on another call before that. It's a lot more calls and virtual meetings than anything else. I do miss just the interaction of the office, seeing people every day. I have a great group of people who work in my team, and they're good people to hang out with, not just work with, and I do miss interacting with them on a
Yeah,
day
yeah,
to
I'm,
day.
I'm in a similar boat, and it definitely feels like we're kind of in a, we've been kind of calling it the over communication stage, where just to get
Mhm.
our feet on the ground and everyone used to this kind of new reality, everyone is, you know, uh, on calls all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So, um, all
And the
right.
infrastructure constraints are on all sides are quite significant. Like our phone conferencing systems just weren't set up to have this many people wanting to conference in all the time.
It's massive. Yeah, it is a completely different. I mean, it's completely different from the way anyone worked before.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because, working for a firm that does so much workplace design, like it's been talked about for a long time that the trend is moving in this direction. But to find everyone
Mhm.
kind of suddenly thrust in it is, I think people are adjusting a lot more quickly than they anticipated they needed to.
Right.
So
What?
we
Sorry. Yeah. Go on.
we've made our people quite mad here. So I'm going to attach a water tower before
Yeah. Water's good.
water is
Some people say
potentially
you need
essential.
that to live. I mean,
Sorry, what was your question?
I was wondering if you talk a little bit about what you do on the day to day.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I don't really talk about that online much. So
Mhm.
I am a marketing person who works with architects and designers typically. Um,
Mhm.
and I am working for, or I work for rather, Gensler. So Gensler is an architecture and design firm that is relatively small in Canada. So there's
Mhm.
like about 130 staff here, which is large for a design firm. But worldwide, Gensler is the largest architecture and design firm. So they have 6,500 plus staff across, I mean, how many offices is it now? 50 offices. So
Mhm.
it's massive. And then the majority of the work is corporate interiors. So a lot of research and a lot of consulting done on kind of the future of work, where work is headed. Um,
Mhm.
and obviously, we're in a situation now where work is changing
Yeah.
very rapidly and temporarily, as far as we can tell. But where that goes from here is kind of up in the air.
Yeah. It's. I mean, we're seeing um, in real time a shift, but there's a lot of. I mean, people are having to fill up, I guess, whatever they can in terms of journalism on this, and in terms of what are the long lasting changes of this thing. I was thinking about that the other day, and it looks like we need electricity for people.
Yeah, they tend to want that. So
Yeah.
we have some options here. I know Ontario has recently, kind of moved away from coal, but that is our easiest way to produce a lot of power right away.
Mhm.
Um, Oil is also an option. We've got nuclear, which we can't afford.
Mhm.
Basically, we can afford coal, oil, or wind at this point in the game.
Well, let's you know what? Let's go for something more sustainable. Let's do wind power.
All right. So now we have to find a location somewhere on our grid with that produces about half the power. That's probably our best bet for now, though.
All right.
I'll
It's
keep.
weird you can't. They don't offer offshore wind as an option.
I
So.
think that becomes an option. Yeah, way well into the
Oh, okay.
future.
All right. Okay. Well, along with fusion. Oh, good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm playing. I didn't intend for this to happen, but basically it is um, the future expansion. So at a certain point, this city will go from being something that we recognize to being something.
Futuristic, right?
Yeah, and basically your option is to go kind of utopia scientific to basically a megacorp that creates a dystopian future,
Oh,
which the game goes from like a very kind of like calculated Excel sheet of like city simulation to like I don't know Blade Runner, and in the blink of an eye,
yeah,
like
yeah.
it just changes at a certain point in the game. So our wind power plant is now online. We are selling power to our neighbors, and
Excellent.
off we go. We want to provide power to all buildings. And it looks like they are not being serviced
Do we need to
by our
like
power
build
plant.
infrastructure for them, or?
I think so. Oops.
I mean, this is part of the problem with these. Like you start to see I don't know. There's a word for this where the biases, I guess, that get built into code in terms of what people perceive city building to be, and what is viable or not viable, right?
Yeah, there we go. There just wasn't enough power.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have met demand. We get a little check mark. And the next
I guess
thing that.
people need.
Sorry?
I guess people need a place to work, right?
Yes,
That's
so
what we're seeing.
we are being asked for commercial demand, low density, low wealth commercial.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you like to place it?
I believe in short commutes, so I guess we'll go there.
Perfect. So we'll just make a block of it.
Yeah,
Live, work, play, right?
that's right.
We are also being asked to place our city hall.
I guess suppose that's important. We don't want there. Yeah. Can we even stick it in any?
We can't stick it in any of our little cells, which
Oh, okay.
is a
We'll put
shame,
it right
but
next to the power plant.
as one does.
Yeah,
I have a feeling the power plants are going to move pretty soon.
that's fine.
Our people are overjoyed that they now have local governance, which hopefully will last.
It's the most important level, the closest to the people.
All right, so you're the first person playing this city.
Mm-hmm.
I anticipate a number of other people are going to have their hands in this in the future. However, as the first person, you have the dubious honor of helping me name it.
Oh, jeez. Um, I don't know. Should we crowdsource names? Is anybody even watching? I think that's
All right,
probably.
let's take a look.
Yeah.
I think we had like 6 people watching at one point.
Okay.
We're up to 4. Um, but you know what? Let's crowdsource it. I think we can do this at any point. I'll send it out on Twitter after this with the.
Yeah. Let's do something more democratic.
We are losing money, which is unfortunate. Um, so we can increase our taxation. This is our
Yeah.
very rudimentary. So the part of the reason I wanted to play SimCity with people is that
Mm-hmm.
I think you can see right away kind of how it works. Whereas there's a bunch of other city simulators on here that are a little more, let's call them robust.
Mm-hmm.
And if you really want to, they're not nearly as, let's say, approachable. So
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
spreadsheet currently we're taxing at 9%. I think once the commercial districts are actually built, though, I think we're going to be in a much better situation.
We end up into a surplus. Yeah.
So let's
Well,
give
let's
that
see
a
how it
second.
goes. We can run. I mean, if this were Ontario, of course, we could not, in fact, legally run a deficit. But
Not only can you run a deficit, but you can take out loans
mm-hmm.
in the form of bonds, and then the game becomes just kind of a race against the clock as the interest accrues.
Right.
I
Right.
don't know if there's an actual like loss condition in the game.
I don't know. I mean, I guess if everybody leaves your city, I haven't played it in like I said in a really long time, so I don't even know how sophisticated any of this is, or when they or if there is a loss condition, as you say.
We are now being asked to provide a house of worship.
Oh, okay. Um, City on a hill.
Let's see, where would that even be? Not government, not fire.
Suppose you could make an argument. If there's a. I definitely wouldn't say it's educational.
No.
Um,
Plaza? No. Not government. Interesting. Goes to show how long it's been since I've played this game.
yeah.
Oh well, that'll be something to think about in the future. We are not quite in the green yet, and we do
Mm-hmm.
have more space for commercials, so let's give this actually a little bit of a boost and allow people to build a little more. Nothing.
Can you build? Like, is it possible for us to build like a boardwalk along the waterfront? Like,
Along
does
the
it allow
waterfront.
that low? Yeah. Does it allow for something like that to
I
happen? I don't
think that
even
it
know.
allows, if you go into nature, we could start to build. Is there a waterfront? I know there's a tourism kind of component to the game. I've just got to figure out what it is
Mm-hmm.
because I'm learning along with you.
I
But
mean, we
yeah,
want our residents to enjoy this wonderful amenity that's right at their
well,
doorstep.
let's at least put a big old park.
There you go. Parks absolutely critical for developing communities.
There we are. This is now. Let's see. If you take a look, you can then see the happiness. So our citizens are like relatively kind of
Yeah,
happy with how we're doing things.
they're
Um,
happy-ish.
I'm looking forward to, maybe we'll start to have some conversations about stable neighborhoods in the future because we've got a density map here,
Yeah.
um, and as of right now, the people of this town are they're not quite likely to move out, but they are certainly not ready to expand and become a dense city. And so the kind of funny thing is that the density in SimCity 5 is
Mm.
controlled by
The streets.
the streets.
Oh, you
So
gotta you're killing me right now with this.
so a low density street is a 2-lane street, and then each one has various levels of density it supports. So only high
Oh God,
density streets.
so I want to talk about this for 1 second while we're on
Please.
this because let me tell you why this is garbage. Okay, so when you go to your high density street here, it's a 6-lane road, and if you look at most successful dense um, cities, the right of way that's really best supportive for this sort of stuff is actually like a 20-meter right of way, which is not never much more than a four lane road, and which they've classified here as a medium
Oh, sorry, let me
uh,
pull up the road again. Yep. So the
density
4-lane
street.
road, yep.
And I just think, like, I mean, here again, you see like sort of the built-in biases that play into this stuff. We had a really interesting talk in city planning from transportation. A guy was a former transportation engineer in Australia, and he talked about like what it took to make successful streets. And he
Right.
really turned around my thinking on this completely when he talked about, because we hear all the time from Toronto Region Board of Trade, stuff like that, that congestion, costs X amount of billions of dollars in lost productivity and stuff like that. And what he was saying, anyway, and which made a lot of sense to me, was that by all means you need to keep your major like goods moving corridors moving. Your 401, 400. Um, I suppose the Gardner to some extent, if you want to look at that, look at it that way. But your main streets in a city, congestion should never be your primary preoccupation. It should actually be the commercial health of the street.
Right.
And like if we look at a Queen Street West,
Yeah.
is it successful because 5,000 cars can move between whatever University and Spadina every hour, or is it successful because it generates millions of dollars worth of tax revenue to city coffers, every day? under
Right.
normal circumstances, obviously not pandemic circumstances. Um, and when you start thinking about streets as about places for people rather than places for cars, and commercial viability rather than just car sewers, essentially, um, it really changes the way you start thinking about the way density should happen, or could happen. I mean, one of my critiques of looking at attempts to create downtowns in suburban contexts is that they actually don't think about the road network at
Right.
all. I mean, you look at a downtown Mississauga. This isn't to throw shade at Mississauga, because lots of people do it. Even in the city of Toronto, we experience the same issues. It's hard to create a downtown around a 6 lane, 8 lane road network. The you need to have that interaction of people. You need to have streets that work for people in order to create density that makes sense and works. You can't just hope that by building enough condos, downtown will sort of spontaneously combust out of the density there.
Right. Right. The density will just provide it. Well, especially
Yeah.
because even if that were true, it feels like there needs to be, some sort of critical mass and some sort of yeah, I definitely understand what you're saying there. It does look like there is a way to do a waterfront.
Oh,
Um,
hey,
there's all sorts of attractions, landmarks,
dinosaur
stadiums.
park. We're gonna need to build a CN Tower at some point on here. Is that even an approved landmark?
I think
Can it be
they're
done?
okay. So let's see what landmarks have they given us access to? We've got the Arc de Triomphe,
Oh yeah,
Big
very
Ben,
appropriate.
Eiffel Tower. CN Tower better be on here. Empire State. Look at the Statue of Liberty. How dare they? This is Canadian erasure. Tokyo Tower is on here.
Come on,
You've got
what's
all
the
of
largest freestanding structure in the world up until a couple of years ago? This is ridiculous.
Toronto erasure.
Ah.
Ah, all right. We're actually
Oh,
rounding
there's your
on.
worship, by the way. There's your worship.
Yeah, I found it.
Yeah.
So we've got a modern temple, which I think will make my city turn into. Oh no, it's not a future one. That's good. So it looks like we can place one of each of these, 0 of 4. So I think we'll kind of start to do that.
Do something ecumenical.
Yeah, let's do a modern
That's,
temple.
it's interesting they don't do they. It doesn't appear they have a synagogue, or is that meant to be the
I don't think so. I think it's mosque, church,
church? I suppose
temple, and
Taoist or
modern
Buddhist or something.
temple.
Wow,
Yeah.
they got some real religion erasure going on
Yeah,
here
no
as
kidding.
well.
I mean, in the chat we have got in the chat we have some people complaining that this is actually a step backwards in the series.
Hmm.
That this is the first SimCity that appears to have been developed without planners in mind. So I might be switching versions depending on who I'm playing with. Um,
Well, whatever. I think this is a backdrop for a conversation more than anything. I don't know
yeah,
that
exactly.
the realism of the simulation is critical to what's going on here. But
Anyhow, we're nearing on one.
yeah,
So I am personally heading back to work, but
same.
thank you so much for joining me. This was a fun little chat, and
No,
I hope you'll kind of follow along as this city emerges from this tiny little corner we've done to something a little bit bigger.
excellent. Thanks so much for arranging this. This was a nice distraction from
Yeah,
everything. I appreciate
that's
it.
what I figured. All right,
Yeah.
take
All
care,
right.
man.
Take care. You too. Bye bye.